Okay, so this one says for number 13, solve and check for extraneous solutions. Extraneous solutions in a radical means that we would have a negative under the radical, which for even roots we're not allowed to have. Or it would mean that if we took a negative number, squared it, but then placed that negative number back into our even root radical, it might not actually give us the same answer that we originally thought we would have. So these are the types of extraneous solutions you want to look for. Your paper, unfortunately, does not give you a lot of room for these problems, so I strongly suggest doing this on another sheet of paper. Okay, the first one, 4x to the 3/4 power equals 32. Remember, our goal in all of these problems is always to get x by itself. If you notice, I have something blocking my x from being by itself, and that main thing is a 4. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4 so I can have x by itself. Now, the only way for me to get rid of this exponent is to do the reciprocal of the exponent, which means that I'm going to raise this to the 4/3 power. By raising this to the 4/3 power, I'm also able to get rid of the 3/4 power, but remember, in everything, what I do on the left, I must do on the right. So now x is going to be equal to 8 to the 4/3. 8 to the 4/3 is also equal to the third root, because remember, the denominator of your fractional exponent, the denominator represents your root, and your numerator represents your power. So this is equal to the third root of 8 to the 4th power. In your calculator, make sure that you put in math number 4 for the third root, and then inside that root you can put 8 to the 4th power. And when you're done, you find out that your answer is equal to 16. Now, in all of these problems, we have to check it to make sure that our answer is correct. The wonderful thing about your calculator is you can put all of this in. Make sure that when you put this in your calculator, though, that you put parentheses around your 3/4, because if you do not put parentheses around the 3/4 in your calculator, it will not give you the right answer. So right now, check it, put it in your calculator and see if it works. Okay, so if you have parentheses around your 16 and parentheses around your 3/4, you should have gotten an answer of 32. And everything checks out. Alright, the next one, part B, and I'm going to have room for part A and B on here, and then I'm going to erase A and B so I can do C and D, so hopefully you guys are writing this down. Alright, part B says 6x to the 2/5 minus 20 equals 4. Well, we've got a few things to do to get our x by itself. The first thing we want to do is add both sides by 20. Guys, see my Knicks and Mets colors here? Alright, so we cancel out and we get 24 and 6x to the 2/5. We still want to get x by itself, so we divide both sides by 6. And now we're left with x to the 2/5 equals 4. Now we can solve for x in the same way that we did in part A, by raising this to the reciprocal of the fractional exponent. So the reciprocal of 2/5 is 5/2. So we will do that as well on the other side. 2/5 and 5/2 will cancel each other out. And we're left with x equals 4 to the 5/2. Remember, the 2 represents your root, and the 5 represents your exponent. So this is really equal to the square root of 4 to the 5th. Now that is very easy to put in your calculator, and when you put it in, you find out that the answer is 32. Now the only way for us to know if 32 is the right answer is if we check it. And the check you can put all in your calculator. So we're going to have 6 times 32 to the 2/5 minus 20 should equal 4. Now remember, in a check, you never work out anything on the right side. You only want to work out the left side to make sure that the left side is going to match the right side. So put this all in your calculator, making sure that you have parentheses around the 2/5 when you put it in your calculator. So take a moment to put that in your calculator now. If you put it in right, you should have gotten an answer of 4. Okay, I hope everybody has both A and B written down on their paper, because I have to erase it to make room for C and D. Okay, I'll leave B up for a little bit, but once I get to D, make sure you have that written down. Alright, part C says square root of 5x minus 7 plus 6 equals 4. Well, we can't do anything with that root yet until we get rid of that plus 6. So we're going to subtract 6 on both sides. And we get 5x minus 7 equals negative 2. Now, the only way to get rid of a root is to do its power. Well, the power that's associated with a square root is technically a root of 2. So the power that we will use to get rid of that square root is a power of 2. Remember, once you have that root of 2 and that power of 2, they kind of cancel each other out. The root goes away, and we're just simply left with 5x minus 7 equals 4. Remember, if you don't put the negative 2 in parentheses in your calculator, it's going to give you an answer of negative 4. But always remember that a negative times a negative is a positive. So when you are squaring the negative 2 in your calculator, don't forget the parentheses. So we add 7 on both sides. Divide by 5, and we find out our answer is 2.2. Now, of course, we need to check this to make sure that it's right. So we take the square root of 5 times 2.2 minus 7 plus 6 should equal 4. Now, when you put this root in your calculator, make sure that all of this is in parentheses, because if it's not all in parentheses, it won't read right. So when you do that, you wind up getting the square root of 4. We all know that the square root of 4 is 2. Uh-oh. Now I know that 2 plus 6 is not equal to 4. It's equal to 8. So since 8 and 4 are not the same thing, that means we have an extraneous solution. It doesn't mean that we did anything wrong. All of our steps and procedures are correct. What happens is here at negative 2 squared, because the value of negative 2 squared is also the same as 2 squared, one would assume that this should be a 2. But no, it's negative 2. So because in our check the square root of 4 is only going to be 2, this check does not work. And because the check does not work, our answer doesn't work. And remember, if the answer doesn't work, you cannot have that there as your answer. You must cross it out. And when we cross it out, we state that there is no possible solution. So make sure that you do cross out your answer, because if not, you're letting us know that 2.2 is a possible solution. Alright, so I have a little bit of room to do D. And D says that it's the third root of x minus 18 is equal to negative 6. Now remember, in C, I did say that if you have a square root, a power of 2 will get rid of that root. Well, the same thing can happen here. A power of 3 can get rid of that root. So third power gets rid of third root, and the whole radical goes away, and we're left with x minus 18. Negative 6 to the third power is negative 216. So this becomes a simple one-step equation. And we're left with an answer of negative 198. Now, as we have in all of the other problems, we have to check it to make sure that it's correct. I'm sorry to be using all this little space. There's not a lot of space on here. Now, you can use your calculator to plug this in, making sure that all of this is in parentheses, and using math number 4 for the third root. So this becomes the third root of negative 216, which is equal to negative 6. So letter D does check. So the only one out of these 4s that did not check was letter C.